North Atlantic, early 1943. The U-boat U-333, a Type 6cc, patrolled its assigned grid, its crew confident in the unseen shield of their communications, a confidence that would prove devastatingly misplaced. Each coded burst, transmitted at high frequency across the frigid expanse, carried orders, intelligence, and tactical updates, all believed to be impenetrable, yet each transmission was a whisper into a void that increasingly held Allied ears. This trust, absolute and unwavering, formed the bedrock of German naval strategy, and its eventual betrayal would unravel the entire U-boat campaign, costing thousands of lives and ultimately shifting the balance of the war at sea. Below decks, Oberfunkmeister Karl Brandt, a veteran radio operator with 6 years of service, meticulously prepared his Enigma machine. The device, a complex electromechanical marvel of rotors and plugs, represented the pinnacle of German cryptographic engineering, a testament to precision and an almost mystical faith in its security. Brandt's fingers, calloused from years of tapping Morse code, moved with practiced efficiency across the keyboard, translating plain text into a seemingly random sequence of letters that only another Enigma, configured identically, could decipher. The machine itself, weighing approximately 12 kilograms, was housed in a sturdy wooden case. Its 3, and sometimes 4, interchangeable rotors, each with 26 electrical contacts, forming the heart of its encryption. These rotors, individually wired and rotating with each keystroke, created a polyalphabetic substitution cipher of immense complexity. A plugboard, or steckerbrett, further scrambled the letter pairs before and after rotor engagement, offering 150 million possible settings. A number so vast it seemed to defy any attempt at brute force decryption. Production logs from the Chiffrierdienst, the German cipher service, indicate over 40,000 such machines were manufactured by 1944, a testament to their widespread deployment across all branches of the Wehrmacht, each unit a miniature fortress of secrecy. Brandt, like his counterparts across the Kriegsmarine, adhered strictly to the prescribed daily key sheets, which dictated the rotor order, starting positions, and plugboard connections. These sheets, printed on water-soluble paper for emergency destruction, were distributed weeks in advance, ensuring synchronized operations across the entire U-boat fleet. The operational doctrine, rooted in the belief that only capture of the machine and its current settings could compromise communications, fostered a sense of invincibility. This perception, however, failed to account for the meticulous, almost obsessive efforts being undertaken hundreds of miles away. Efforts that sought not to steal the machine, but to understand its very language. The short, concentrated bursts of Morse, known as Kurzsignale, were designed to minimize transmission time and thus reduce the risk of radio direction finding. A typical U-boat message, perhaps a sighting report or a request for new orders, would be condensed into a 20-second burst, a fleeting whisper across the electromagnetic spectrum. Naval intelligence estimates from the B-Dienst, the German radio monitoring service, consistently reported low interception rates for these brief transmissions, reinforcing the false sense of security. Yet, each brief signal, no matter how compressed, contained within each structure the subtle, repeating patterns that, given enough volume and time, could be exploited. The strategic implication of this perceived invulnerability was profound. It allowed Admiral Donitz to command his U-boat wolfpacks with unprecedented tactical flexibility, directing them to convoys, redeploying them to new hunting grounds, and coordinating their attacks with a precision previously unimaginable. This centralized command structure, entirely dependent on secure communications, was the engine of the early U-boat suck. Thus, driving the tonnage war to critical levels for the Allies. For every U-boat like U-333 on patrol, There were dozens more receiving their daily directives, each encoded message a thread in the vast interconnected web of the German naval war effort. The fate of these U-boats, and indeed the course of the Battle of the Atlantic, rested upon the absolute, unquestioned integrity of those coded signals. The North Atlantic, 1941. German U-boat commanders, their vessels submerged in the frigid depths, continued to transmit their operational reports and tactical directives, confident in the impenetrable shield of the Enigma cipher machine. Each message, a series of seemingly random letters, was generated by a complex electromechanical device, its rotors spinning through 158 quintillion possible settings. This cryptographic labyrinth, they believed, rendered their communications utterly secure, allowing them to coordinate wolfpack attacks and report sinkings without fear of compromise. Allied listening stations, stretching from Iceland to the Cornish coast, were not yet deciphering these intricate signals, but they were certainly hearing them. Operators, often working in dimly lit huts, meticulously logged every burst of Morse code, every rhythmic tap and pause that emanated from the distant German transmitters. These raw, unreadable intercepts, initially just static and noise, were nevertheless valuable data points in a rapidly escalating war of information. The sheer volume of these intercepts was staggering. Naval intelligence reports indicate that by late 1941, an average of 3,000 German naval signals were being recorded daily across the Allied network. These were not understood, but their existence, their frequency, and their originating approximate locations were all meticulously noted. This foundational data, a vast and growing archive of incomprehensible German chatter, would become the bedrock upon which future decryption efforts would be built. Each intercepted message, though a jumble of letters, carried its own unique fingerprint, the distinct keying style of a particular radio operator, the power output of the transmitting station, the time of day, and the direction from which the signal originated. These seemingly minor details, when aggregated and analyzed, began to form patterns. The very regularity and discipline of German radio procedure, designed for efficiency, inadvertently provided a wealth of meta-information. The Allies began to construct a comprehensive picture of German naval radio traffic, even without understanding the content. They could discern the ebb and flow of communications, identifying peak transmission times and periods of silence. This allowed them to map out the approximate operational areas of U-boats and surface raiders, tracking their movements across the vast expanse of the Atlantic, purely through the presence or absence of their radio signals. This early, non-decrypted intelligence was crucial for convoy routing. If a cluster of U-boat signals was detected in a particular quadrant, Allied convoys could be rerouted hundreds of miles away, buying precious time and saving countless tons of vital supplies. The Germans, oblivious to this silent surveillance, continued to transmit, their faith in Enigma unwavering, unaware that their very act of communication was betraying their presence and intentions. The meticulous recording of these signals also served another, more profound purpose. It provided the raw material, the cryptographic text, that Bletchley Park's codebreakers desperately needed. Without a continuous stream of intercepted messages, even the most brilliant minds would have no data to analyze, no patterns to exploit, no cipher to break. The very act of intercepting and archiving was a silent, patient siege against the perceived impregnability of Enigma. This vast collection of unreadable signals represented a promise, a future vulnerability waiting to be exploited. Each recorded message was a testament to the meticulous, often monotonous work of countless radio operators and intelligence analysts. They understood that even without comprehension, the sheer act of listening was an act of war. Bletchley Park, early 1941. The initial breakthroughs against Enigma, while significant, did not immediately unlock the deluge of German communications. The sheer volume of intercepted radio traffic, recorded on miles of paper tape and then transcribed, presented a formidable challenge. Analysts, many of them recruited for their linguistic and mathematical prowess, faced a daily intake of thousands of messages, each a cryptic sequence of letters. The early successes were often hard-won, requiring days, sometimes weeks, of painstaking work to decipher even a single day's communications from a specific German network. The process of breaking a new Enigma key, known as a key setting, was a race against time. Each German network, from the U-boat fleet to the Luftwaffe, changed its key settings daily, sometimes more frequently. This meant that once a key was broken, the window of opportunity to exploit the intelligence was narrow, often less than 24 hours. The cryptanalysts at Bletchley Park developed increasingly sophisticated methods, moving beyond purely manual techniques to incorporate early electromechanical devices like the Bombe, designed by Alan Turing and Gordon Welchman. These machines, though primitive by modern standards, could rapidly test millions of potential Enigma settings, dramatically accelerating the decryption process. Despite these technological advancements, the sheer quantity of intercepted messages remained a critical factor. Even when a key could not be immediately broken, the accumulation of undeciphered traffic was not without value. The patterns of radio silence, the frequency of transmissions, the call signs used, and the geographical locations from which signals originated all provided valuable intelligence. Traffic analysis, a discipline distinct from cryptanalysis, could infer troop movements, supply convoys, and even the operational status of units, simply by observing these external characteristics of the radio communications. For example, a sudden increase in radio traffic from a specific sector, even if undeciphered, might indicate an impending offensive. Conversely, an abrupt cessation of transmissions could signal a unit being withdrawn or destroyed. The meticulous logging of every intercepted message, regardless of its decipherment status, built a vast repository of data. This data allowed analysts to map German communication networks, understand their command structures, and even identify individual radio operators by their unique fists, the characteristic rhythm and style of their Morse code transmissions. These patterns, when combined with the occasional decrypted message, began to paint a more complete picture of German intentions and capabilities. The German radio crews, meticulously trained and operating under strict protocols, remained largely oblivious to the scale of the Allied interception efforts. Their trust in the Enigma machine's cryptographic strength was absolute, reinforced by the machine's complex internal wiring and the daily changing of key settings. They believed their communications were impenetrable, a conviction that allowed them to transmit sensitive operational details with a degree of confidence that would ultimately prove fatal. The Allied effort, therefore, was not merely about breaking codes, but about systematically accumulating every scrap of information, however seemingly insignificant, to build an intelligence mosaic that would eventually expose the vulnerabilities of the German war machine. Bletchley Park, 1940. The early work of Polish cryptologists, particularly Marian Rejewski, had provided the foundational understanding of the Enigma machine's internal wiring and the mathematical principles governing its operation. This crucial intelligence, a direct result of meticulous reverse engineering and algebraic analysis, had been shared with British and French intelligence just weeks before the German invasion of Poland in 1939, offering the Allies an unprecedented, albeit incomplete, head start. The Poles had developed the Bomba Kryptologiczna, an electromechanical device designed to automate the search for daily Enigma settings. This machine, a precursor to the British Bombe, exploited a specific operational weakness: the German practice of sending messages with a double encrypted indicator. The Bomba could systematically cycle through rotor positions, identifying potential key settings by looking for specific patterns of self-cancellation in the repeated indicator. Upon the outbreak of war, The British at Bletchley Park inherited these insights and began to scale them. Alan Turing, a central figure, refined the Polish bomba into the British Bombay. This new iteration was significantly more powerful, capable of testing millions of rotor combinations per second, a speed essential for breaking the increasingly complex German Enigma traffic. The Bombay was not a decrypting machine itself, but rather a code-breaking accelerator designed to deduce the daily Enigma settings. The bomb's operation relied on a cryptanalytic technique called a crib, a piece of assumed plaintext corresponding to a known piece of ciphertext. For instance, German weather reports often began with predictable phrases, or U-boat commanders might report nothing to report at specific times. These cribs, often just a few words long, provided the necessary anchor for the Bombay to eliminate incorrect rotor settings. Each Bombay machine, weighing over a ton, consisted of a series of interconnected Enigma-like rotors wired in reverse. When a crib was fed into the machine, it would electrically test potential rotor positions and wirings. A stop occurred when the electrical circuits aligned, indicating a possible correct setting. These stops were then manually checked by human cryptanalysts for validity. The first operational British Bombay, named Agnes, became active in March 1940. Its initial success rate was limited, but as more machines were built and cryptanalytic techniques improved, the output steadily increased. By the end of the war, over 200 Bombays were in operation, processing thousands of German messages daily. The sheer scale of this operation transformed intelligence gathering. No longer were isolated messages deciphered through painstaking manual effort. Instead, a continuous stream of German communications, particularly from the Kriegsmarine, became accessible. This mathematical and engineering triumph provided the Allied command with an unprecedented window into enemy intentions and dispositions, a strategic advantage that would prove decisive. The impact of these machines and the minds behind them was profound. They did not simply decode messages. They enabled a new form of warfare, one predicated on foresight and preemptive action. The information gleaned from these intercepts became known as Ultra, a designation that underscored its extraordinary secrecy and critical importance. The frigid waters of the North Atlantic, early 1942. The capture of U-boat 110 by HMS Bulldog and HMS Broadway proved a pivotal moment, not for its destruction of a submarine, but for the intact Enigma machine and associated codebooks recovered from its sinking hull. This single act of naval daring provided the British cryptanalysts at Bletchley Park with the critical daily settings for the naval Enigma, a key that had, until then, largely eluded their most persistent efforts. The immediate consequence was a sudden, dramatic increase in the volume of deciphered U-boat communications, transforming the Battle of the Atlantic. The recovered Enigma machine itself, a 3-rotor model, offered an unparalleled opportunity for direct mechanical analysis. Engineers could examine the precise wiring of its rotors, the stepping mechanisms, and the reflector, confirming and refining the theoretical models painstakingly developed through painstaking traffic analysis. This physical examination allowed for the precise calibration of bombs and other decryption aids, reducing the computational guesswork inherent in breaking each day's new settings. The machine became a Rosetta Stone for the entire system, revealing the subtle engineering tolerances and operational quirks that could be exploited. Beyond the machine, the captured codebooks were invaluable. These volumes, including the Kurtz Signal Heft, short signal book, and the Wetter Kurzschlüssel, weather short key, contained the pre-arranged short forms and codes used to compress common messages, effectively providing cribs for the cryptanalysts. A message like enemy convoy sighted might be reduced to a 3-letter code, and with the Kurtz Signal Heft, these codes could be immediately translated, offering a known plaintext segment to match against encrypted traffic. This direct access to the German operational lexicon accelerated the decryption process by hours, sometimes days. The operational impact was immediate and devastating for the U-boat fleet. Prior to these captures, Bletchley Park often struggled to break naval Enigma traffic within 24 hours, limiting its tactical utility. With the captured materials, decryption times plummeted, frequently allowing Allied convoys to be rerouted around known U-boat patrol lines. Admiralty records indicate that convoy losses, which had peaked in late 1941, began a discernible decline in the spring of 1942, directly correlating with the improved intelligence flow. The psychological effect on the German U-boat command was insidious. They continued to trust Enigma implicitly, attributing their mounting losses to superior Allied air cover. Radar advancements, or sheer luck. Admiral Donitz, in his operational directives, frequently emphasized the unbreakable nature of their communications, a belief reinforced by the machine's complex internal workings. This unwavering faith in Enigma prevented any serious re-evaluation of their cryptographic security, ensuring that the Allied advantage, once gained, would persist. The captured materials also offered a deeper insight into German naval doctrine and operational planning. The messages, once deciphered, detailed U-boat patrol areas, rendezvous points, and planned attacks. This intelligence allowed the Allies not only to evade submarines, but also to actively hunt them, dispatching escort groups and aircraft to intercept U-boats before they could reach their targets. The transition from reactive defense to proactive offense was a direct consequence of this intelligence windfall. The sheer volume of intelligence generated from these captures was staggering. Daily intercepts provided a near real-time picture of U-boat deployments across the Atlantic. Naval intelligence reports, once sparse and speculative, became dense with actionable information, detailing specific U-boat numbers, their positions, and their intentions. This granular data allowed for the precise allocation of Allied resources, ensuring that air patrols and naval escorts were deployed with maximum efficiency against a known threat. The German radio crews, diligently encoding their messages, remained oblivious to the fact that their trusted Enigma was now a transparent window for the enemy. Their meticulous adherence to protocol, the very discipline designed to ensure security, now inadvertently aided the Allied cryptanalysts. Each message sent, every weather report, every convoy sighting contributed to the ever-growing body of intelligence that was systematically dismantling their operational effectiveness. The capture of these machines and codes was not an isolated event. Subsequent U-boat captures, though less dramatic, continued to provide vital updates and confirmations, ensuring Bletchley Park maintained its edge even as rotor wirings and key lists changed. These repeated windfalls reinforced the Allied decryption capabilities, allowing them to adapt to German countermeasures and maintain a consistent advantage in the cryptographic war. The steady stream of intelligence became a constant, corrosive force against the U-boat fleet. The North Atlantic, early 1943. The U-boat menace, once a shadow stretching across the vital convoy lanes, began to recede, not through direct confrontation alone, but through a subtle, insidious erosion of its operational advantage. German radio crews, diligently encoding their messages with the Enigma machine, continued to transmit their positions, intentions, and target assessments, unaware that the very foundation of their secure communication had been compromised. This trust in their cryptographic shield allowed the Allied command a silent, devastating foresight. Allied intelligence, now routinely decrypting U-boat traffic, could anticipate the formation of wolfpacks with uncanny precision. A typical decrypt, often originating from Bletchley Park and relayed to Western Approach's command, might detail the rendezvous coordinates for 6 Type 7 U-boats scheduled for a specific grid square in the mid-Atlantic, along with their projected patrol lines. This information, once processed, was not used to directly intercept the U-boats, a tactic that risked revealing the source of the intelligence. Instead, it guided the rerouting of convoys, often by hundreds of miles, steering them clear of the waiting predators. The strategic impact was immediate and profound. Convoy SC-118, comprising 63 merchant ships, was diverted south by 200 nautical miles in February 1943, successfully evading a concentration of 11 U-boats. Damage reports from this period show a marked decrease in successful U-boat attacks against these rerouted convoys, a stark contrast to the devastating losses of the previous year. The U-boat command, receiving no contact reports from their deployed packs, often concluded that the convoys were simply not present in their assigned sectors, leading to a growing, unsettling bewilderment within Donitz's headquarters. The technical examination of these rerouting decisions reveals a sophisticated interplay of human intelligence and naval strategy. Decrypted messages, often designated ultra-intelligence, were analyzed by a specialized team at Derby House, Liverpool, who then issued special intelligence reports to convoy commodores. These reports, deliberately vague in their sourcing, would simply state information received indicates enemy activity in a particular area, providing new waypoints for the convoy. This careful obfuscation ensured the Enigma's compromise remained a closely guarded secret. The quantitative shift in convoy survival rates became a critical turning point in the Battle of the Atlantic. In the first quarter of 1942, U-boats sank an average of 100 merchant ships per month. By the second quarter of 1943, following the sustained application of decrypted intelligence, this figure had plummeted to 30 ships per month, despite an increase in the number of U-boats deployed. This reduction in losses, directly attributable to the ability to avoid contact, allowed vital war materials and supplies to reach Britain, sustaining the Allied war effort. The ideological implication of this intelligence coup extended beyond mere logistics. It instilled a growing sense of futility among U-boat crews who, after weeks at sea, would return to base having made no contact, their torpedoes unused. Unit diaries from U-boat commanders from this period increasingly reflect frustration and a dawning suspicion that the convoys were somehow aware of their presence, even when no visual or radar contact had been made. This erosion of morale, subtle yet pervasive, began to undermine the very confidence that had fueled the early successes of the U-boat arm. The silent advantage of decrypted intelligence, a weapon wielded without a shot fired, slowly choked the life from the German U-boat offensive. The trust placed in the Enigma machine, once absolute, now became the conduit for its own undoing, guiding Allied ships away from danger with an unseen hand. The U-boat command, even as the scale of losses mounted, maintained an unwavering faith in the Enigma's cryptographic integrity. Admiral Dönitz, reviewing the grim statistics of the Atlantic, consistently dismissed the notion of code compromise, attributing the destruction of his wolfpacks to a combination of enhanced Allied air patrols, improved radar technology, and sheer misfortune. His daily situation reports, meticulously preserved in the Kriegsmarine archives, reflect a commander grappling with a strategic dilemma, but one whose foundational premise, the security of his communications, remained unassailable in his own estimation. Interrogation files from captured U-boat officers consistently reveal a deep-seated trust in the machine they operated daily. They spoke of the Enigma as an unbreakable cipher, a technological marvel that rendered their messages impervious to enemy eavesdropping. This conviction was not merely a matter of indoctrination. It was reinforced by the machine's complex mechanical operations. The daily changing of rotors and the intricate plugboard settings, all designed to create an astronomical number of possible keys. The technical specifications of the Enigma, particularly the M4 model introduced for U-boats, boasted a theoretical key space of approximately 1.5 times 10 to the 20 combinations. This immense number, derived from the permutations of its four rotors, the reflector, and the plugboard connections, seemed to defy any practical attempt at decryption. Production logs from the Chiffrierdienst, the German cipher service, confirm that thousands of these machines were manufactured and distributed, each unit a testament to German engineering prowess. This quantitative superiority in key space, however, masked a critical vulnerability that the German high command simply could not conceive. Their strategic thinking, rooted in the belief of their technological supremacy, failed to account for the nascent field of cryptanalysis evolving within Allied intelligence. The very complexity they so admired became, in the hands of dedicated codebreakers, a predictable pattern, a mathematical problem that could be systematically attacked. The ideological implication of this blind spot was profound. It allowed the German war machine to continue operating under a false premise, pouring resources into a strategy that was, unbeknownst to them, being systematically undermined. Each U-boat launched, each convoy targeted, was predicated on the assumption of secure communication, an assumption that was, in reality, a fatal flaw. The operational directives, the tactical maneuvers, the very rhythm of the U-boat war flowed from this unshakable but ultimately erroneous belief. The quiet reflection of the captured crews, years later, often centered on this paradox: the absolute trust placed in a machine that, in its very perfection, had betrayed them. They had sailed into the Atlantic, confident in the secrecy of their orders, only to find themselves hunted by an enemy who seemed to anticipate their every move. The ocean itself became a silent witness to this technological deception, absorbing the wreckage of a fleet whose fate was sealed, not by superior firepower alone, but by the unseen currents of intercepted information. The cumulative effect of ultra-intelligence, meticulously assembled from these decrypted Enigma messages, began to manifest as an undeniable strategic advantage for the Allied forces. U-boat command, confident in the impenetrable nature of their communications, continued to transmit detailed operational orders, convoy sightings, and even distress calls, all unwittingly providing the very information needed to orchestrate their destruction. Each intercepted message, whether a routine weather report or a critical wolfpack coordination, contributed to a mosaic of German naval activity that Bletchley Park continuously updated and refined. This intelligence, once processed, flowed directly to the Admiralty's Operational Intelligence Center, where it informed convoy routing, anti-submarine patrols, and air cover deployments. The U-boats, operating under the assumption of complete secrecy, were frequently met by Allied forces that seemed to possess an uncanny prescience regarding their positions and intentions. The element of surprise, once the U-boat's most potent weapon, was systematically stripped away, replaced by an increasingly dangerous vulnerability. Damage reports from the first quarter of 1943 alone documented the sinking of 35 U-boats, a figure that far outstripped replacement rates and signaled a profound shift in the Battle of the Atlantic. The sustained losses began to erode the morale of the German U-boat crews, who, despite their training and dedication, found themselves increasingly outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. The psychological toll of these encounters, where Allied destroyers and aircraft appeared with unnerving accuracy, compounded the material losses. The strategic implications extended beyond the immediate attrition of the U-boat fleet. The persistent threat of interception forced German command to divert resources from other critical theaters to protect their Atlantic operations. Convoys, once a primary target,